voy a ir un poco al grano. Él lleva en el mundo del self-storage desde el año 2000. Es uno de los ponentes principales a nivel en Estados Unidos en todas las conferencias anuales que se dan. Es un top 3 de los conferenciantes. Ha llevado liderando un call center que llevaba a 5.000 tiendas de self-storage, ¿vale? Ahora mismo esa empresa, bueno, se la compró otro call center y lleva actualmente, una de las cosas que hace, maneja un call center de unos 100 centros en Estados Unidos que se llama, bueno, basado que se llama Call Here Self-Storage Call Center, ¿vale? Aparte tiene una empresa, es el manager de una empresa, una consultora que se llama Self-Storage Strategies, donde hacen estudios de mercado, todo tipo de servicios de consultoría.
Research and consulting services.
Está especializado en ventas, marketing, prácticas de call center y management con la gente, y a lo largo de estos años, de estos más de 20 años, pues ha creado millones y millones de dólares en lo que es convertir vuestro self-storage en una propiedad todavía más rentable, y bueno, pues las que se han ido luego vendiendo, pues él un poco se optimiza eso y al final eso es dinero, ¿vale? Ha escrito 3 libros, 2 de ellos son del self-storage. Son libros difíciles de encontrar. Uno se llama Rent It Up y otro se llama The First Rule of Selling, ¿vale? Yo creo que no sé si ahora mismo siguen en Amazon o no, yo los compré por allí y los recomiendo mucho. Son pequeñitos, pero van muy al grano y ayudan mucho para trabajar con la gente de vuestros centros, ¿vale? ¿Qué más? Que no quiero dejarme nada. Bueno, tiene un podcast que se llama Troncast with Tron Jordein, que lo podéis bajar en Apple, Spotify, y ha dado conferencias en más de 6 países, ¿vale? Sin más, os voy a dejar con Tron y...
Hawái, Javier, Hawái.
Sí, perdón, él es verdad. Él es el hospedador, vamos, el que organiza toda la conferencia anual que hay en Hawái, que si quiere Tron luego nos da tiempo, nos puedes explicar un poco cómo es, y de hecho puede que nos haga un precio especial si algún miembro de la Asociación Española pues quisiera ir. Pero él es el que organiza toda la conferencia y la hace todos los años en Hawái. Pues ojalá algún día podamos ir. Tron, te dejo, sin más. Muchísimas gracias.
Buenos tardes todos. How are you today? Thank you so much for being here with me. It's a wonderful honor to be here. And I'm going to talk to you today.
De lo que os voy a hablar hoy es básicamente...
So one of the things I've spent a long time doing is studying how people buy and the best way to help people make decisions about buying. So one of the books I wrote was called The First Rule of Selling. And help people talk themselves into buying just about anything. And today, I'm going to work through the program at a little bit of a slower pace than I might normally, because Zoom is sometimes a little bit limiting, and there's times when the internet drags a little. And also, I want to give Diego a chance to form his thoughts as he's doing the translation. And that is actually a really good introduction for what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about how the language of selling, how sales is really the poetry of business and commerce. And a part of what happens in selling is you have to give the people you're talking to a chance to translate what you're saying into what they understand. And in some ways, it's very similar to what we're doing now, where I'm speaking, Diego's translating, and he's forming the thoughts for us. So in some ways, that's very similar. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to share my screen now so you can follow the notes as we go. And what I hope will happen from today is that you start to think very differently about how you form your language and how you use language when you're selling, right? So I think the first thing to do is to ask yourself, what do you sound like when you're talking with people?
Excuse me, Tron. We cannot see your face. Your camera went off.
Oh, sorry. Let me get that back.
Now you're back.
All right. I'm back. Good. I'm glad to be back. So think about who you are when you're selling to people. Are you someone who just is very quick and is trying to finish a transaction? Or are you someone who's getting to know the people and listening to them and trying to inspire them to take action with you? This is a very different approach. And I know sometimes if a customer's in a hurry, it's fine. Just let them rent the storage unit and move in. It's fine. But many times customers are not in a hurry and they don't know what they need, and they're maybe confused, and they're certainly under stress. And that's when the way you used your language makes a huge difference. One thing you should ask yourself is, can you be replaced by a robot in your selling? Now, maybe that's a funny question to ask, but all of you have been on websites where a little chat bot pops up and you chat something in there and you get answers right away. That's a robot talking to you through text. Do you sound like a robot when you're selling to people? Can you be replaced by a chat bot? Because I can assure you, many businesses are looking to replace people with chat bots because they can get a consistency in their messages and can get the correct information delivered every time. But if you think you can be replaced by a chat bot, let's make sure you can't be. Let's talk about how you can use your language to be not only important to your business, but important to your customers. And I'll tell you what I'm talking about. You don't want to just be as efficient as a shopping
Simplemente ser tan eficientes como es un
few buttons and make their purchase. Instead, you want to be able to help people experience the joy of shopping, the satisfaction of acquiring something, the relief of meeting their goal or solving their problem. So these are two very different things. And these smiling people here out shopping, that's how your customers should feel when you're done talking to them. Are you helping people enjoy their homes and their lives because now things are uncluttered and more organized and they feel better about their home? Or are you just letting them rent a storage unit? These are two very different things. Are you helping your customers who are having trouble to solve their problems so that they see you as a source of relief and they can see you as the company or the people who really helped them solve a problem, and now they're very grateful for what you did? If you don't have customers who look like this guy once in a while, then you're just taking orders and you're just renting units. You're not making a deeper connection. I suggest you should be like a poet, reading your works and performing for your audience. And just as in this picture, you have an audience. Your marketing team talks about the audience for your social media networks, for your advertising. So present to your audience like a poet who's telling wonderful stories and painting images that inspire people and help them get to the next level. You should be like someone putting on a show for children who inspire them and get them involved and bring them some joy. Now, I'm not suggesting that you set up a little theater in your office, but that could be fun. I suggest you become a storyteller who can tell stories of heroes and villains and how tragedy turned to joy. This maybe sounds very strange talking about this in terms of self-storage, but stay with me, stay with me. You could be or should be an actor who's playing out stories for your audience to get them inspired, to stop them in their tracks today so they can focus on how you're going to help them solve their problem. Language is an amazing thing to use. And for those of you on the call who are Spanish speakers, you have a gift right there. Spanish is a wonderful language of poetry and storytelling, and use it that way. Every language has some interesting phrases and ways of speaking that really help to tell stories and get agreement from people. And when I talk about getting agreement from people, it's when your story and their story line up. Your story is, we have a wonderful storage place and we have a great service that helps people buy time for when they have to make decisions or get extra space when they're too crowded, or however you see that. That's your story. Their story is, they have a problem and now they need storage. So bringing those two stories together is what I talk about when I talk about agreement. Now, every language can also be just fast and efficient. But I want you to stop being fast and efficient when you speak and start being a poet and a storyteller. You have particularly two words in Spanish that are so powerful that Spanish speakers often use just as filler, or just to fill dead air, or just to end a sentence, right? Think about how many times in a day you might say vale or verdad, right? I want you to start using those intentionally, not just as filler, not just to pause, not just as a transition, but use them intentionally to stop a second so that the person you're selling to can do the translation in their head and think, aha, this is what I need. Because in all of your selling, what you say matters, but what your customer says to themselves matters most. And if your customer is saying to themselves, these seem like good people, this seems like a good place, I think I can afford this, this is going to solve my problem, right? And so when you use your language strategically, and especially in Spanish, when you use vale and verdad strategically, people will stop and translate to themselves, and they'll keep talking themselves into renting with you, and you get more and more agreement where your story and their story comes together. So how do you do this? You have to slow down the conversation. Many times as salespeople or customer service people, we're in a hurry. We're in a hurry to get out the information. We're in a hurry to answer the question. We're in a hurry because we're afraid if we slow down, the customer will hang up the phone and go away or walk out of the store and be gone. So we're always in a hurry. But instead, I encourage you to slow down the conversation, because when you do that, it helps the person you're talking to breathe a little easier and relax. Because everyone who calls you for storage is stressed. They're under some sort of stress. Now, you may have a few people who call you because they have a happy situation that makes them need storage. That's not usual. Usually they're stressed. And if you can slow down the conversation, they relax a little bit. And they also pay closer attention to you, because sometimes when you speak quickly, when you're trying to help people and you're in a hurry, no matter what language you're in, you often sound like la 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 la, and the person doesn't absorb what you're saying because you're just going too fast. So if you slow down, they can focus on you.
Te tranquilizas, si vas más despacio pueden centrarse en lo que dices, traducirlo a su propio idioma y lo más importante, el idioma que utilizas.
Some peace and show them what you're talking about. So for instance, an easy phrase to learn that is so wonderful is if someone asks you a question and your answer is, well, of course, we can help you with that. And then describe how you're going to help them. Just a simple phrase like that reassures people, calms them down a little bit. And then you can use your descriptive words to show them how you're going to help. So for instance, you might say, oh, sure, I can help you get a storage unit. It's so easy to rent with us. It only takes a few minutes. Once you come in the office, we'll just have you sign one piece of paper, and then we can take you down the hall, which is well lit and really clean. And then we'll open up the door for you. And what you'll like here is our doors are so easy to use. They slide up just so smooth. And then we'll get you in your storage unit and everything will be fine. Now, that may not be exactly how you present it to someone, but when you do something like that, it slows them down. They pay attention. They feel better, and they understand the process that's coming, so they can let you help them rent the unit. When you tell your story, think of the fairy tales you listened to as a kid, or the stories you tell kids now, or the stories you love to see on TV or in the movies. There's always some sort of tension. There's a problem happening. Okay, in the self-storage story, it might be the tension is a husband and a wife are about to have a baby. They're going to have the baby in about 3 months. So there's some tension, right? Lots of joy, but anxiety and everything else. And then there's a crisis. The wife's brother loses his job and has to move out of his apartment because he can't afford it anymore, and he needs somewhere to live. That's a crisis. So being a good sister, she says, you can come live with us. So now there's a crisis. Not only do they have to change out their spare room or their guest room to become a place for the baby to live, but now they have to figure out how to turn their living room into a place for the brother to live until he can get back on his feet again. Well, this requires perseverance, tragedy, resilience. These things always happen in a story, right? So they're struggling to find a solution. And then, just as luck would have it, The husband walks past your storage facility after he gets some coffee with a friend and says, oh, that would be a great idea. And then they call you. And then out of the blue comes the solution. It's a self-storage unit is going to solve the problem. If any of you have ever paid attention to ancient Greek tragedies and ancient Greek theater, there was always a device called the Deus ex machina, which would be this big revelation or something amazing happened to solve the problem that just kind of happened out of the blue. That's who you are in the story of all of these people who are having tension and stress in their life. You're the Deus ex machina. All of a sudden, there's a storage unit. They get the storage unit. They're all organized. The baby can sleep well now. The brother gets a new job and he's going to save up some money and get his own place again in a few months. But in the meantime, they're living comfortably and happily because of your storage unit. And now they live happily ever after. This may sound a little silly, or it may sound like I'm completely going overboard with this, but this is the emotional part of what happens in self-storage and how you can really become significant as your story of, we have a nice self-storage place, and their story of, my gosh, now we've got tension and a crisis, come together to win you a good customer and to help them in their life. This is really what selling is about, and how using your language can create the stories that make this happen. Now, of course, you have to really pay attention to your audience as you're doing this, because if you let people talk, they will tell you so much information you can use. Sometimes as salespeople, we just want to be in a hurry. We want to say, how much space do you need? When do you need it? Can you come in? We just need a credit card. Hurry up, get in here. Sometimes that's what we sound like as salespeople. But instead, if we listen carefully, we can hear what's going on in someone's life. They'll tell you what their problem is. They'll tell you what caused the tension. They'll describe the crisis to you. So you can then use the same terminology as you talk about how you're going to solve their problem. And especially when you're using empathy phrases, things like, oh, I understand. Yeah, I know what you're going through. Oh, yes, that must be difficult. Things like that. And then you layer on top of that a concept they call social proof, which is really just talking about how your customers enjoy your storage place now. It's very easy to say, oh, I understand what you're going through. I had a customer come in last week who was doing pretty much the same thing in their life. And boy, they felt so much better after getting their storage unit and getting their home organized. It was really nice to see how it helped them. Little stories like that just make such a difference when people are asking you about how to use your storage. You build your story then around their story. And again, this may seem like I'm making way too much out of this, that really all you need to do is to say, do you need a storage unit? Great, give me your credit card. And sometimes that works with a few people, but most people need the reassurance. They need to understand that your story solves the problem in their story. So let's talk about some of the basic components. The first thing that has to happen in the story you're telling and the pictures you're painting is it has to be clear to your customer that you are not an idiot. Now, the reason I say that is because many salespeople and many customer service agents are not well trained, or maybe don't even really care. It's hard to tell. But oftentimes when you're dealing with salespeople or customer service people, it's frustrating and it's not satisfying and it's sometimes annoying. You've had this happen yourself, I'm sure of it, where you've hung up the phone after talking to someone and went, oh, this person was an idiot, right? So you don't want that to happen to you. And how you make sure that doesn't happen is you listen, you slow down, you use your empathy phrases. The second big component is to assure people that they are not alone. Every story you hear at self-storage from customers is a story you've heard 100 times. So assure people it's okay. You're not the only one going through this. Some people are embarrassed when they need a storage unit, or some people feel a sense of shame because of the situation they're going through that made them need a storage unit. They don't need to feel bad. It's just a storage unit. It's okay. Lots of people go through trouble. It's fine. We have a storage unit to help you. Don't worry about it. That's an important emotional puzzle to solve for someone early on, because many people are embarrassed and ashamed, as strange as it seems. The next big thing is to let people know that you help people all the time. You've helped so many people. Even today, you've helped people who are in a tough situation. And that's what we do at self-storage. We don't just rent out space to people. We help people solve their problem by giving them space that they can use. It's a different way of looking at it. The next very important piece of building your story and creating your poetic language is to make sure that people understand that you really respect them. Because again, many times when you're dealing with sales or customer service people, you don't feel respected all the time. And that's just not fun. So you want your customers to always know that you respect them, their time, their money, their efforts, their situation. That's an important part of telling that story. And then expand the story so they understand how the same story happened with other people and it resolved itself so nicely because of the storage unit. And so this is one of the power phrases of selling, this phrase, most people. Most people in your situation do it this way. Most of our customers like to do it that way. Most of our happiest customers will do it this way. That most people phrase really brings someone into the story and really helps them become a part of your story. So that's important. And then the last part here is to build the expectation. What's going to happen next in the story? I don't know if you've ever read a long book to a kid and, you know, did it over many weeks where you read them a little bit every night. What do they always say before you say, okay, it's time to close the book and we'll read more tomorrow? They always say, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? That's what your customers want to know too. So paint a picture for them of what's going to happen next and do it slowly, using your language deliberately. So you do sound like that poet giving a performance or the storyteller creating the story, because here's what's going to happen next in the story. You're going to come into the office. You'll bring 2 forms of identification. You'll bring your credit card, and then we'll show you a unit or 2. You decide which one's best. Then we'll take about 5 minutes to do some paperwork. We'll put your lock on the unit, and then you can move in anytime you want. So whatever your process is for getting someone in the door and into their storage unit, that's what you tell people to show them, here's how the story will resolve. Here's what's next in the story. And it's very important, especially when you're doing that, is to use some descriptive language and really paint a picture for them so they can imagine themselves, okay, they're now walking into the storage unit. They're now rolling up the door. There's all the space they get to use. When people can picture this in their head, they become your customer emotionally before they even pay you to become your customer. And that's where the beauty of your poetry and storytelling skills makes a huge difference. So you need to check yourself to make sure that your story is being told appropriately for that person and that they're seeing themselves in the story. So the most important thing is to know how the customer reacts. Now, many people in sales, if they're evaluating salespeople and evaluating their salesperson's performance, they listen to what the salesperson says. I think that's okay, but that's only a part of it. So if you listen to call recordings of sales calls, you should pay very much pay attention to what the customer is saying. How does the customer react? Are they making what I call happy noises like, aha, mm-hmm, oh yeah, huh, oh, right? How many times in Spanish do they say back, oh, bueno, bueno, right? How many times are they making happy noises? That's very important. If you don't hear happy noises from your customer, the story is not lining up right. What kind of things do they say? Do they say things like, oh, that'll be good. Yeah, I could use that. Oh yeah, that's just what I need. If they're saying things like that, your story has lined up beautifully with their story. So listen for things like that. And if you don't hear them, then you have to let the person talk some more and try and regroup your thinking so you can change the story and maybe use different poetic language to help them now get to where they're saying, oh, I think I'd like that. Yes, I want to do that. And when you hear customers put themselves in the story, then you know you've been successful. So an example of that is you say something to the customer and they say, when can I move into my storage unit? Well, they said my storage unit and they haven't rented it yet. They're picturing themselves already using the storage unit before you're even done talking to them. When you hear things like that, then you know the stories are lining up beautifully. And certainly listen for what their vision of a happy ending is. Okay, the happy ending might be, I finally get that old couch out of my living room and put it in storage so my kid can use it someday. I'm tired of looking at it. Maybe that's the happy ending. Maybe the happy ending is, as in the example I talked to earlier, the baby has a very comfortable room to sleep in and will sleep really sound so the parents can sleep sound. And at the same time, the brother's been very comfortable living in the living room and it's been a happy living situation and he's been able to get back to work because he's felt safe and comfortable. Maybe that's the happy ending for that story. Find out what happy ending they're looking towards and build that into your story. Because in the end, this is really all we want, is we want a happy resolution where we can hug and say, oh, we did it, right? So it may seem a little strange. And maybe those of you who look at storage as more of an efficient and really well-organized business, it might be hard for you to imagine this, but for some people, the act of opening their lock and pulling up their storage door is just a beautiful thing because of what it represents to them. It represents to them the peacefulness of their home that's now well organized and decluttered. It represents to them the memories that are in the storage unit. Maybe it's old family photos or a baby bed that their child slept in as a kid, things like that. So for us, this picture may just represent, oh, there's an opportunity to upgrade that hat, that lock there. We should, you know, if our doors looked like that, we'd upgrade those locks. But that's not what people do. People would look at that and say, ah, that represents my peace of mind. That represents the good resolution of my problem. So think of it that way. And for many people, your storage place has now become a part of their story. Your storage place is partly why they live a happier life and they feel more peaceful and they have less tension. It's not just, great, we're an affordable option for people and so they use us. That is true, but that's just a piece of it. So if you use your language intentionally and speak slowly with people and use some poetry and descriptive terminology, people will repeat that to their friends and express to their friends as well how your storage place has become a part of their story and has really helped their story become a better story. It maybe sounds a little bit too fantastical, but this is what happens when you use your sales language well. And so I hope that I haven't just been telling some fun stories or nice stories, but that somewhere inside you, you're listening and thinking, huh, maybe there's a better way to use my language. Maybe there's a better way to use descriptions. And maybe there's a better way for me to help my staff become more poetic and better storytellers and help the customers that we talk to put our story and their story together to make a long-lasting business relationship that works well for everyone. So I would love to hear some questions. If anyone has any stories they'd like to tell about how they've observed things I've talked about in their own selling, that would be really neat. So I'm gonna stop the screen share.
Thank you very much, Tron.
Let everyone ask any questions now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Tron. It was very, very interesting. Before we start with the questions, Tron, do you mind writing in the chat box the website for the Hawai Unconference? And so
yes,
everybody
of
can...
course.
Sí, sí, por supuesto. Perfecto.
When will it be? It will be in October, isn't it?
Yes, it is October 17th to 23rd on the Big Island of Hawaii. And if you use the coupon, that's the coupon is just the initials for the Spanish Storage Association. If you use the coupon code, you will save $150 off registration.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I hope that we are allowed to travel to the US by autumn this year because of the
I hope so.
COVID restrictions. So anyone that wants to make a Tron question, please put the hands up. There is a button in reactions that says raise hand, and I will give you the voice. We don't have a lot of time for a lot of questions, but the first 3 questions will be special. Maybe the first 3 people that ask will have something special for from the AES side. in the next Congress. Hopefully we can meet everybody together. Okay, Tron, there are some questions here starting. We start with Buenos Aires. Depósito Belgrano. María, hello. Do you want to do it in Spanish or in English?
Y prefiero en español.
Perfecto.
Bien,
Bueno,
¿cómo están?
dale.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Mi
Una
nombre es María
venezolana.
Ángel. ¿Qué tal? Estoy en Buenos Aires, pero soy venezolana, un gusto. Bien, mi pregunta va con el tema de, en Latinoamérica este es un servicio que no es muy conocido y tenemos como el desafío de educar a las personas para qué puede servir. En ese sentido, ¿cómo recomiendas la comunicación para llegar a ese cliente que está totalmente frío o a esa audiencia totalmente fría y decirle, mira, esto es algo que puede resolverte la vida de ciertas maneras, que aparte, como estamos en Latinoamérica, hay que saber bien en qué vamos a gastar el dinero, ¿no?
See, I think that's a very good question. And so one thing I would do is to look at what do people do with their stuff now? How do people store their things now? Do people put things in their grandmother's attic? Do people have a spare room that they put things in? What are people using now? And then frame it around that. So just as a for instance, if many people take their spare things and put them in their grandmother's basement, let's say, because grandma always gets things from the grandkids, you could talk about it in terms of that. You could say, one thing people love about storage is it's so much better than grandma's basement. Because if you store your things in grandma's basement, then you have to come to dinner every Sunday or you're in trouble. You don't have to come to dinner with us if you store with us, right? So you can make some fun around whatever people are doing now. And then exactly, just like what you did is you laughed a little. And then if you can get people to laugh about the story you tell, then it's good. So I would think about that. I would also think about how do people live now in your community, and how could they live better with the storage unit? And then think about that. So it may be that I'm just saying someplace where people have seasonal furniture. Let's say they have some outside chairs they put on their deck or their porch every summer, and then what did they do with it in the winter? So you could speak about storage as, we're the place you put your summer chairs, the snow comes or something, right? Find out what are the problems now. So it does take a while though, because in the US we've had self-storage here for, I don't know, 50, 60 years. So it's just normal here now. And it's not like that everywhere.
Very well.
Muchas gracias.
Muy bien. Antes de pasar a la pregunta de Matías, María Ángeles, cuéntanos un poquito acerca de vuestra empresa en Buenos Aires. ¿Cuántos sucursales tenéis? Y cuéntanos un poquito, si estáis creciendo, cómo va el negocio allí en Argentina.
Bueno, en Buenos Aires tenemos 5 sucursales y bueno, ahí se escucha mi bebé de fondo, les mando salud. Tenemos 5 sucursales, sí, tenemos proyectado el crecimiento y uno de los desafíos es ese, ¿no? Traer a las personas que no están buscando, porque la mayoría de los clientes hoy son los que necesitan mudarse o los que están remodelando su casa o necesitan llevar las cosas por alguna razón a otro lado y ahí surge la necesidad. lo que me planteo yo desde el área de marketing es pensar cómo le digo a la gente que existe esto, más allá de que en el momento no lo estén necesitando y de repente le creamos esa situación de traer las cosas, aunque ni se imaginaba que... Es más, te dicen, pero esto no es de acá, esto es nuevo. Y no, la empresa está hace un montón, la verdad que tenemos un montón de experiencia y ese es como el desafío que tenemos ahora. Aparte, yo quería hacerles una pregunta porque, perdón, que sigo, ¿no? Preguntando. Me estoy metiendo más por el lado de la automatización del marketing. ¿Cómo hacemos para que esta automatización no se vea como un robot? Porque yo estoy de acuerdo con que el storytelling es como la mejor manera o la mejor vía para vender sobre todo este tipo de servicios. ¿Cómo hacemos para que la automatización no se vea como un robot o no se vea tan automática?
I think that's a wonderful question because everyone is trying to find the right mix between people and technology, right? And how do you automate the things that you don't need people for? And how do you put people in charge of the things that the technology does poorly, right? So everyone is struggling with that. So what I would suggest is in all of your automation, always have a door someone can leave that will take them to a real person. So it may be as simple as your chat bot on your website might say, what can I help you with today? Then someone answers the chat bot, and then your answer to their answer could be, great, I can help you with that. Or click this link, it will ring to our agent, right? So everywhere it makes sense, have a way someone can click to call, be connected to a live person. Because you will have people who just think, well, I have some very basic questions. It might be, when is your office open? I can put that in the chat and get an answer back. I don't need to talk to someone. So if you always set it up where you can get an automated response or you can talk to a real person, if you always have that going, then everyone's happy. And it's a little tricky to build those because you're only guessing at what will make people happy, but people will tell you too as you talk to them more. So that's a long answer to your question, but I think that usually works well.
Muy bien, muy bien. María Ángeles, creo que a partir de ahora todos los webinars que hagamos, si quieres hacer una pregunta, va a ser la primera en preguntar, porque estoy convencido que a todos nos encanta tu acento. Aquí en España
bueno.
tenemos
Pensé que era porque mis preguntas eran muy buenas, que fueran las dos cosas que me...
Aquí en España tenemos la suerte de tener cada día más venezolanos, así que sois todos bienvenidos aquí en España cuando queráis venir. Matías,
bueno,
vamos contigo.
Gracias.
Okay, hi. First of all, my question was also about industry awareness, so that's kind of solved. So I will do a follow-up question because I'm not letting my chance of talking with Tron go by. I would like, so I'm also a new company. I have less than a year and we just started it from scratch. I am in Mallorca, which is very strong on tourism. So it's been a hard year to be our first year. And during this time, I've set myself to have all my processes as smooth as possible. And in between them, I put together an e-commerce, so an online rental website. And in Spain, it's not very common that companies have one. And I was wondering if you have a number for the, let's call it the partition of online rental on new tenants from the US or something that might be a benchmark for us. To have like a goal, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question too, because when we first started doing online rentals with the company I was working with and doing rentals over the telephone, we did not know what to expect. It was, I don't know, 2007 maybe, and it didn't seem that strange an idea, but we didn't know what to expect. And when we ran some projections, we thought, you know, if 3% of people rent online or rent over the phone, we have paid for the development many times over. It took no time to get to 30%. It was pretty impressive. And I think right now, many people are well above 50% of new customers doing the whole rental either online or over the phone. So you can get there. 50% is not a crazy number, but it will take a little while because I don't know if you're able to really study the conversion science of it all, but many times it's just basic conversion science behavior, right? Is a red button better than a yellow button? Is, you know, things like that, which sound a little boring, but they do help with conversion rates. But anyway.
And luckily, when you're a small company, you hire the whole package, so you don't have all the flexibility with the system. But that's okay. I mean, if I have anything near 30, I'll be happy. And just one more question. Okay, so I'm new. I'm doing great in terms of customer satisfaction, Net Promoter Score over 90. So, is there any incentive for people to share their experience, some word of mouth, you know, like impulse that you might recommend?
So in my experience, now lots of people do this their own way, but in my experience, you never have a better chance than when they're in front of you in your office. So for a little while, one of my clients had an Instagram poster frame in their office. And everyone who came in, they would stand them in front of the Instagram frame and take a photo of them, upload it to Instagram and tag them. And then they, you know, told everybody, you know, if you make some comment on this, then, you know, I'll give you a free box or whatever they gave them. So, you know, find some fun ways to get people to use their own networks. Things like that are fun. Otherwise, I think many people feel annoyed by being asked for reviews. Now, the first or second email is fine, right? Please review us, great. But I think, so I do business with a company that sends me an email once a week and asks me for a review. I already gave them a good review. Now they're annoying me. I want to go back and give them a bad review because they keep wanting more reviews. So, but what I'm saying is you have to kind of feel out how that works. But especially when people are right in front of you, you could have a tablet for them that opens right to your Google My Places page and have them do the review right there at the desk. So it's fresh in their mind. So things like that will help.
Thank you very much.
Matías,
of course.
Entonces eres nuevo en el sector. Bienvenido. ¿Cuánto tiempo hace que abriste tu negocio?
Abrimos en julio.
En julio del 20. Ah, pues mira, pues nada, mucha suerte.
Muchas gracias, la necesitaré.
Y bueno, pues desde Balearic Box de Matías seguimos con Palma de Mallorca, la competencia de Matías. Lucía Moragues nos pregunta, bueno, Lucía, ¿no? Te paso la palabra si quieres preguntarlo tú y si no leo yo la pregunta.
Estás en mute,
estás en silencio, Lucía.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks so much, Tron, for telling us your story. It's great, your tips and recommendations. I'm sure they will improve our sales processes. Well, Balearic Box, more than competence, we collaborate together, right? We are in the same market, so we treat same customers, so it's always cooperate and something else. Mm-hmm. I think I already have the answer to my question. It was about, you said that you've written 2 books. One was the first rule of selling, and the other, I think it was rent it, right?
Rent it up, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Super. And they talk about self-storage.
Yes. And I'm sorry, they're both difficult to find because when I wrote them, they were written as what we call a work for hire. So I don't actually own the rights to those anymore. And so they're out of print. But if you find them, they're worth finding. So
A challenge, good. And my question will be, how do you handle customers where the issue is the budget, that they cannot afford it? You know, they really want it, and you know that, and they love the story that you're telling them, but there is an economical break there. How do we act on these cases?
Right. Well, one thing that's interesting is you never know what it means exactly when someone says, I can't afford it, or that's too much money. You never know exactly what they mean. Sometimes that's just a stall. It's a negotiating tactic to break the negotiations or to stop. But there's a couple good questions you can ask. One might be, what were you hoping to pay? What did you have in mind? Or what did you have in your budget for self-storage? And then sometimes they'll say, well, I didn't want to spend any more than 50 euros. Or they might say, I really didn't know what a storage unit would cost. It might be one of those two answers. And if they say, oh, around 50 euros, then you can say, great, I have a unit you can have for 50 euros. Let's go look at it and see if you can fit in it. From what you described to me, it sounds like you'll need a bigger unit, but I have a 50 euro unit. Let's go look at it. And now you've kept things alive. Now, if they say, I just didn't know what a storage unit might cost, then you can say, you can proceed with giving them some education. You can say, oh, well, that's no problem. Not everyone knows what the rates are. So we start at 76 euros for this unit, all the way up to 1,000 euros for that unit. So we have something for everyone, depending on how much space they need. So let's figure out how much space you need, and then I'll find you the best unit at the best price. Something like that works to keep the conversation going. So things like that. Just don't stop when someone says, I can't afford it, or it's too much money. Don't stop there. Find another way to keep going. That's part of the happy story, if you will.
Thank you.
Great turn. So the first three people that have asked have been María Ángeles, Matías, and Lucía. You will have something in the next Congress, physical Congress. Don't worry, we will not forget that. So we have time for one more question. Tron, we are running out of time, but maybe we'll have.
Are we going to have the winning numbers of the lottery next week?
I
hope so. I haven't yet. I haven't gotten it right yet, but we keep trying.
Bueno, pues damos tiempo para la última pregunta. Sería genial que esta última pregunta la hiciese alguien que nunca ha preguntado en el pasado. Así que si alguien es nuevo en el sector y quiere estrenarse por la puerta grande, este es su momento. Y si no, le doy la palabra a Javier Navarro, presidente de la Asociación Española de Self Storage. Javier.
Venga, alguien que se anime.
Alguien nuevo que quiera simplemente presentarse y contarnos un poquito dónde opera, cuántos centros tiene y cómo le va, como nos ha dicho un poco Matías. Rosa, Grupo La Nave, Alicante, ¿quieres presentarte un poquito? Te pongo el compromiso. Estás en mute, Rosa. No te escuchamos.
Déjame que le voy haciendo una pregunta a Tron y a ver si alguien más se anima, ¿vale?
Vale.
Tron, muchas gracias por la exposición. Quería preguntarte, ya que tú tienes tanta experiencia y vives en Estados Unidos, es una pregunta de hacia dónde crees que va a ir el sector en Europa, ¿vale? Y cómo podemos hacer los no muy grandes para diferenciarnos y poder estar lo que es en Internet, que es lo más difícil, pues porque ya sabes que mucho es a base de presupuesto de inversión. Entonces, mi pregunta primera es, ¿cómo crees que van a evolucionar principalmente los precios? ¿Qué pasó en Estados Unidos cuando el sector ya se ha ido haciendo más maduro? Y por otra parte, ¿qué podemos hacer los small operators para aparecer ahí en Internet y diferenciarnos también un poco y pelear, pelear sin tener tanto presupuesto? Gracias, Tron.
Yes. So the internet question is always very tricky because there's only so much space here. There's not a lot of room there to be found. So Google is your best friend and your worst enemy at the same time. So work on your Google My Places as much as you can to make those as robust and rich as possible, because that's the difference. Work on getting as many reviews as you can in your Google Places. That makes a big difference. And then work with your web developers to make sure that you're doing really good local search engine optimization, right? So, Javier, for you, it really doesn't do you any good if someone in Mallorca finds your website, right? That doesn't do
que alguien en Mallorca encuentre tu sitio
in specific neighborhoods in Madrid
en
to
un
find.
vecindario concreto en Madrid o tu zona, algo que realmente sea tu zona de atracción, ¿no? Las técnicas de Search Engine Optimization de Google te ayudan mucho y utilizar ese tipo de mecanismos es bueno. Es algo que podríamos estar debatiendo una semana, cómo hacerlo bien. Pero hay desafíos importantes, hay algunas barreras que están basadas en el idioma, hay otras en la ubicación, otros problemas que tienen que ver con la ubicación, hay desafíos que tienen que ver con cómo opera la gente. Es complicado, pero sobre todo trabaja con Google My Places, creo que ese es el punto por el que empezar.
¿Quién? ¿Alguien le ha dado, no?
El directo, direct. Tron, did you finish your answer before we go to the next one?
Yes,
Oye,
I think so, yes.
Sí, porfa.
Ok, Rosa, Grupo La Nave, Alicante.
No ha terminado la de la evolución de los precios.
Vale. Sorry.
¿Cómo crees?
Oh, I missed that part of the question. Could you ask that again, please?
Tron, tú como llevas ya el sector allí está más maduro, lleva más de 50 años, ¿cómo ha sido lo que es la maduración del sector en cuanto a precios, rentas y un poco cómo crees que va a pasar en Europa y cómo es la manera de intentar mantener un precio alto para poder alquilar?
Yeah, so I think many people in the US thought that there was a lot of price comparison and price shopping happening. And I think there's less of that than we thought. So many operators will watch the competitors closely and try to keep their prices in line with their competitors. I'm not sure that's the best way to do it. I think instead, you should look at what you need for your financial projections and price accordingly. Now, that's tricky to do when you're new or if you're at 50 or 60% occupancy because you're trying to get more customers. And you may feel like you have to do price concessions, but you have to be careful because there's lower price does not mean more inquiries necessarily. And without having proof that it does that, sometimes cutting price to try and rent more units is just cutting price. It doesn't do anything to help rent units. So I think one thing we also learned is that the ceiling for rates is much higher than we thought it was. So whatever you're charging now, you could probably charge twice that and still have a lot of customers. Maybe not change the price today from $10 10 to 20, but over time. So I think part of what you have to do is to keep pushing pricing and to see where you find resistance. But it's hard to do that because we're trained to be scared of pricing, and we sometimes back away from a pricing plan because of one comment one customer makes. So it's a little tricky, but I would just keep moving prices and see what happens.
Muchas gracias, Tron.
Muy bien, pues antes de...
Yeah.
Go, Tron. No, quería decir que antes de irnos de vuelta al Cono Sur, me gustaría que Rosa nos presentase rápidamente su empresa, los Grupo La Nave, líderes en el Levante español. Rosa, cuéntanos un poquito de vosotros, que nos conocemos todos. Estás en silencio, Rosa, todavía, ¿eh? Sigues en silencio. Estás en mute.
No. Vale, ya estoy.
Sí.
Vale, bueno, pues decía que somos una empresa familiar que, bueno, pues reconvertimos un poco algunos inmuebles que teníamos y que alquilábamos, y empezamos en este sector que era totalmente desconocido para nosotros y desconocido también en nuestra ciudad. En Alicante no lo conocían. Costó muchísimo hacer a la gente un poco darse cuenta de que esto es un sistema que funciona, que hay que pagar por él, que tiene una utilidad, que está justificado. Y bueno, nos ayudó mucho CSI cuando habían así asesinatos en trasteros y tal. Eso nos vino muy bien porque nos dio a conocer y la gente luego decía, trasteros como CSI y tal. Entonces, bueno, pues eso fue una ayudita. Yo quería hacer también una pregunta y me quiero llevar también el regalito, si puede ser. Quería decir, nosotros, por ejemplo, la atención telefónica la damos en un 900 que atiende una persona. Y la gente muchas veces ahora tenemos mucho la sensación de que no queremos que nos molesten por teléfono, que no me gusta que me cuenten muchas historias, no me vayas a llamar luego cada 2 por 3 para venderme nada. Entonces, queríamos saber un poco cómo tratar esa llamada, porque nosotros lo que queremos potenciar siempre es que vengan al centro, que nos conozcan, que vean nuestras instalaciones. Y claro, en esa llamada la gente un poquito lo que quiere saber es dime el precio, dime qué tienes y no me cuentes mucho una historia. Entonces, bueno, pues que tú nos digas algunas frases, alguna forma de tratar la llamada telefónica en un 900, en un teléfono, en un call center. Gracias. He hablado muy rápido, no he ralentizado.
Yes, it's okay. Thank you, Diego. Thank you so much for your help today. That's a very good question. And this is a tricky part of some shoppers, is that they think if they just say, how much is it? They'll get a response and that it'll mean something. And I would bet that most of the time when someone presses you for the price and they say, just tell me how much it is, they usually hang up afterwards and you never see them again. That's maybe an exaggeration, but so here's a couple things you can do. You can ask a question like this. What's most important to you? Getting the most storage you can afford or getting the cheapest price on a unit? Now they have to tell you a little bit of their story, because if they just say, how much is a unit? They don't have to tell you any of their story. But if you ask them, what's more important to you, getting the cheapest price or getting the biggest storage unit you can afford? Now they have to tell you a little bit of their story, and you have a chance to connect with them. And another answer to that is to be silly. There's an old technique in selling called just, be ridiculous is the technique. So if someone says, how much is a storage unit? You could say, we're running a special rate this week. It's only 10,000 euros per square meter. And then wait and see what they say. Some people will be angry with you because you played a trick on them, and other people will laugh and say, oh, tell me for real what the price is. So that's a good way to do it. Another good way to do it is tell people, We have a variety of pricing depending on what you need. Everything from €20 a month to €1,000 a month. You got to come in and pick what you want, and then I'll get you the best price. When can you come in and see us? So that's another way you can do it. And unfortunately, none of these things work 100% of the time, but they all work, 20% of the time, 30% of the time. So it's worth playing with things like that.
Gracias.
Very interesting, Tron. Thank you very much. So we go now to our last question with Marcelo from Buenos Aires. Marcelo, dale fuerte. No se te escucha, Marcelo. No se te escucha, no sé por qué. A ver. No se te escucha. ¿Soy yo el único que no lo escucha, Marcelo, o hay más gente que no lo escucha? No.
A ver, saco.
Ahora sí.
Ahí sí, perfecto.
Ahí sí. Perfecto.
Voy con esto. Bueno, muchas gracias por todo a Tron. Trabajo con María Ángel, así que hoy estamos copando las preguntas. Dos preguntas, en realidad, una cortita y la otra solo si hay tiempo. Si no, no importa, la dejamos. La primera, ¿qué ratio entre cierre de ventas y contactos considera que es un buen ratio? Un ratio aceptable y demás. Y la segunda, que es la más larga, solo si hay tiempo, ¿qué opina de este nuevo servicio que se viene dando hace un tiempo, pero que tiene que ver más con capitales de riesgo y demás, que es esto de llevar el box a tu casa, lo que le dicen el box en la nube, o que van, te buscan las cosas, las llevan y te las llevan a vos, uno nunca ve el lugar. En España creo que está box to box, y bueno, hay otros, en Estados Unidos creo que hay más. ¿Qué opina de eso? Si es una amenaza real o no. Muchas gracias.
Of course, my pleasure. So the first answer is you can get to 50% rentals. You can rent to 50% of the inquiries. You can get there. Good operations can get to 60%. More than that is tricky. Now, if your facility is full, it might be hard to get to 50% because you don't have a lot to rent. But 50% is a good goal and a doable goal. And then on your second question, if I understand correctly, you're talking about what's often called valet storage, where they deliver a little box, you fill it up, and they take it to their warehouse. It is a good business, and there are people getting into it. And I think for a certain type of customer, it makes sense. I think in the US, we see that the very dense, very wealthy urban centers do well with valet storage because people don't have time, they don't have transportation, and they'd rather just pay someone to take care of it. But there's only so many people that will use valet storage. The other thing with valet storage is it's not so much a storage business as it is a transportation business. And whoever's doing it has to be very good at managing the logistics and the transportation. I used to manage a water delivery company many years ago, and we had, I think, 15 trucks delivering water. And I can tell you from my experience, I never want to manage trucks again. It's not fun to manage a fleet of trucks. But that's what the valet storage is really about, is about managing fleets of trucks. So it's real. It may take some of your business, but there is something about the self-storage experience that most people really enjoy.
Very well, muy bien.
Muchas
Marcelo,
gracias.
50% el objetivo. ¿Qué tal estáis por ahí en Buenos Aires? ¿Por encima o por debajo de ese 50%? Espérate, te quedaste colgado.
Ahí está, perdón. Nosotros estamos por En realidad estamos por debajo, estamos alrededor de un 30-35, pero porque estamos con todas las sucursales llenas. Nos cuesta un poco, nos pasa que nos chocamos con el techo bastante seguido y vamos construyendo más box y construimos y nos chocamos, construimos y contratamos más personal para construir. Bueno, estamos en esa carrera de construir más rápido, vender más rápido.
Hay que subir el precio, Marcelo, hay que subir los precios, no se puede estar lleno nunca.
Bueno, lo hemos hecho, la última vez que relevamos estamos inclusive el doble que la mayoría. El que más cerca está, estamos un 30-40% más arriba. Entonces, bueno.
Interesante, interesante. Tron, it's already 1 hour and 20 minutes. I think we are almost, we are over. We are running out of time. Thank you very, very, very much for your what you did today with us. We hope to have you back here in the Spanish Association, please, in the future.
Yes, thank you so much. And I know with COVID, I can't come to Spain personally, but I feel like a little bit I've been in Spain today, and I'm so thankful for that. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And thank you, Diego, the interpreter. Thank you, Diego. Very well. Bueno, pues muchísimas gracias a todos. Sole, ¿quieres decir las últimas palabras antes de cerrar?
Nada, pues hola, buenas tardes. Pues muchísimas gracias. Y Tron, me has abierto mucho la mente. Soy nueva en el sector y he descubierto un montón de cosas hoy sobre... Nunca he utilizado un self-storage, tampoco yo personalmente, y por qué la gente busca esto, ¿no? Y es tan importante saber cuál es el dolor de la gente para poderles ofrecer una solución. Y al final, lo que sí llevo mucho tiempo es en ventas y es como todas las ventas, ¿no? Tienes que conocer. Hay una técnica en ventas que me gusta mucho hablar con la gente, y hay una cosa que es que se nos olvida a los vendedores a veces, es preguntar cómo estás antes de empezar a hablar y escuchar antes de contar lo que tienes, ¿no? Porque ahí sacas mucha información y en este sector es lo mismo, por lo que he visto. O sea que gracias, gracias, gracias.
Muy bien.
Con mucho gusto.
Muy bien. Pues señores, muchísimas gracias por asistir. Nos vemos pronto. Fuerte abrazo.
Adiós, bye bye.
Hasta luego.
Bye bye. Hasta luego.